My name is Mark Brian D. ESTOCAPIO, and I am here to in front of you to report my topic is entitled Freshwater and Aquaculture. And here we go. Earth is also known as water planet because it is more than water than land. However, 97% of the world's water is salt water and only 3% is fresh water. What is fresh water? Fresh water is salt-free water that is not found in the sea and oceans. There are two types of fresh water, the stagnant water and the flowing water. Stagnant water simply water that's still. Can you list some sources of stagnant water? Some sources of stagnant water are lakes, puddles of water, and swamp. Flowing water that name implies is constantly moving such as river and streams. Both stagnant and flowing water have the diverse species of plants and animals. And do you know that the 40% of world's fish living freshwater environments, some of the animals are the arapaima, catfish, and ducks. However, the trout only live in the fresh water. Most of the plants and trees depends from fresh water to survive, such as mango tree, golden apple, and banana. We depend fresh water on many things like drinking, washing, cleaning, and for agricultural purposes, industrial factories, and also recreational activity like swimming. And water is the most common substances on Earth, necessary for the life of most animals and plants. Some living things need fresh water and some needs salt water, but all living things need some form of water to keep on living. Aquaculture. What is aquaculture? Aquaculture, farming in water, is the aquatic equivalent of agricultural or farming on land. Aquaculture, also known as aqua farming, it is the farming of aquatic organisms such as crustaceans, fish, mollusks, and aquatic plants. Aquaculture involves cultivating freshwater and saltwater populations under controlled conditions, can be consecrated with commercial fishing, which is the harvesting of wild fish. Defined broadly, agriculture includes farming both animal husbandry, and plants, agronomy, horticulture, and forestry in part. Similarly, aquaculture covers the farming of both animals, including crustaceans, finfish, and mollusks, and plants including seaweeds and freshwater microphytes. While agriculture is predominantly based on use of freshwater, aquaculture occurs in both inland, freshwater, and coastal, from brackish water, seawater areas. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, or FAO, aquaculture is understood to mean the farming of aquatic organisms including fish, mollusks, crustaceans, and aquatic plants. Farming implies some form of intervention in the rearing process to enhance production, such as regular stocking, feeding, protection from predators, etc. Farming also implies individual or corporate ownership of the stock being cultivated. Particular kinds of aquaculture include fish farming, shrimp farming, oyster farming, mariculture, alga culture such as seaweed farming, and the cultivation of ornamental fish. The Food and Agriculture Organization describes aquaculture as one of the industries most directly affected by climate change and its impacts. Some forms of aquaculture, such as seaweed farming, have the opportunity to be part of the climate change mitigation, while other forms of aquaculture have the negative impacts on the environment, such as through nutrient pollution or disease transfer to wild population. By 2030, 62% of all seafood produced for human consumption will come from aquaculture. Today, it's about 50%. So what is aquaculture? Aquaculture is a controlled process of cultivating aquatic organisms, especially for human consumption. It is similar concept to agriculture, but with fish instead of plants or livestock. Aquaculture is also referred to as a fish farming. and the seafood that you find at your local grocery store. It's likely labeled as farm fish. Aquaculture can happen all over the world, and it does in a coastal ocean waters, water ponds and rivers, and even in the land in tanks.
Good afternoon, I'm Navigates Dungog. So, characteristics of aquaculture and its present status. Despite the fact that fish culture is an age-old tradition in some regions of the world, it is relatively new as a significant industry in most countries. Extensive adoption of traditional techniques of aquaculture depends on natural productivity and little control over the stocks. Intensive and semi-intensive. Intensive adoption of full complement of culture techniques including scientific pond design, fertilization, supplemental feeding or only feeding without fertilization, full measure of stock manipulation, disease control, scientific harvesting, high-level inputs, and high rate of production. Semi-intensive adoption of mid-level technology, partial dependence on natural productivity, fertilization, supplementary feeding with stock manipulation, medium-level inputs, and medium rate of production. So, what is the difference between aquaculture production and fisheries production or capture fisheries? Aquaculture production implies human intervention to enhance captive stock. Individual cooperative ownership of stock. Fisheries production implies human intervention to manage and maintain fish stocks at natural production level, and public ownership of stock. Capture fisheries. Hunting-gathering activity, variable recruitment, and unpredictable stock size, uncertain sustainable level of exploitation, difficult to regulate so as to maintain stock sizes, relatively low productivity. Many of world's major capture fisheries range from heavily exploited to heavily overexploited. Capture fisheries versus aquaculture. Mean yearly productivity increase in decade of 1990s less than 1% for capture fisheries compared to 10% for aquaculture. In China, aquaculture production volumes already surpass capture fisheries production. This current trend to use aquaculture production for stock enhancement of wild population, providing link between aquaculture and fisheries, although similar links have existed before.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm CUEVAS, and our topic is all about freshwater and aquaculture, and I'm going to discuss to you the origins of aquaculture and main groups of cultured species worldwide. Aquaculture developed thousands of years later, 3500 BC. Common carp may have been first fish species cultured. First aquaculture text written in China 500 BC according to Fanley. Oysters were farmed in Japan about 2000 BC. Aquaculture in Africa, America, and Australia started only within last several years. Reason for late development of aquaculture is interactions between environment, aquatic organisms are not well understood as those between terrestrial organisms. Main groups of cultured species worldwide. Fishes, mollusks bivalve, mollusk gastropods, crustaceans, algae. Fishes, domesticated species breeding on genetically selected broodstocks. Major carps, Chinese carp, common carp, Atlantic salmon, tilapia. Mollusk bivalve, table oysters, primarily Pacific oysters, also European flat oysters. Table mussels, marine, scallops, cockles, black arc, and clams. Mollusk gastropods, abalone. Crustaceans, marine shrimps, black tiger shrimps, Asia and Australia. Pacific white shrimp americans. Freshwater crustaceans, matin crabs, China. Freshwater prawns, several species but primarily macrobrachium, giant Malaysian prawn. Algae. Macroalgae, seaweeds cultured for hundreds of years. Brown seaweeds, Japanese kelp. Red seaweeds, Rhodophyta. Green seaweeds, Chlorophyta. Microalgae. Diverse taxonomy, cultured last 2 to 3 decades. Source of high value fine chemicals, caroteroid fatty acids, waste water treatment, soil conditioners for agriculture, and biofuel production.